remember everybody was like, oh my God, you're pregnant. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. How is that happening? Okay. Because everybody's like, you are very brave for being pregnant and in a doctoral program. And I remember I was going through the food line of like the buffet line during one of the break sessions. And this faculty member behind me was like, oh, you're pregnant. Most women don't actually complete the program. So you probably won't complete it. I'm like,
At home, Haley is a mother of one. In her career, Haley is a learning and development leader who helps growing companies build leadership pipelines and succession plans. Her passion lies in adult learning, career coaching, and talent development. She has over 15 years of experience in the training and education space with a doctorate of education from Johns Hopkins University with a specialization in mind, brain, and teaching. I'll make sure to share all of Haley's contact information in the description below so you can contact Haley for a free 30-minute consultation, or if you want to learn more about her. Haley and I met at a previous company we both worked for. We've stayed friends, and Haley has been a mom I've leaned on for my career and mom journey. We talk about everything under the sun, from relationships, work, revelations, and life as women. So thank you for chatting and sharing your mom journey with me and the viewers today, Haley.
yeah,
welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So excited to be here.
I'm excited to hear all about your mom journey, including balancing career and school. But before we jump into it, where is your kid today? Is there anything that they said to you or did that just kind of stands out that you want to share?
So my son is at school today, and it was show and tell today at school. And so he was, all aflutter about what to take. And so, he had a giant box of Legos originally. I'm like, honey, you can't take a giant box of Legos, dude. So he had to like pick out just one thing out of the Lego bin to take. So it ended up working out, but yeah.
That's so cute. It's just kind of like comparing what we get flustered by versus them, but it's so adorable.
It was pretty cute, yeah.
So Haley, will you walk us through what your experience with motherhood was like from pregnancy to current day, whatever you feel comfortable? I know it's like a very long journey and you can't remember every single thing, but like what stands out to you?
Yeah. So my pregnancy was kind of unexpected. I was in my I think it was either my second or my third year of going through my doctoral program. I think it was second. It was 2019. And still very much in the thick of, and I was also working full time. So I was going to school, and then also working full time. So big surprise. And I think generally like I was all, I had no, I immediately knew that I wanted to keep my son and move forward with life with him. My partner, I was not in a relationship with, and he was less on board originally. And so that was tough. The first probably couple months of the pregnancy were really challenging as far as that goes, because you're trying to learn about somebody that, you didn't know you were going to have a kid with. And so you're like figuring out their quirks and then also navigating being pregnant and shifting your body and doing schoolwork on top of that and working 40 hours a week. And so it was, I was pretty exhausted. I remember I would get up, I was still getting up about, 5:30 or 6 in the morning. And I would go check my email by like 7. By 8:00 a.m., I was laying on the couch sleeping, like taking a nap. I mean, I was exhausted. That was like the first probably like 3 months. I was exhausted. And luckily I was working from home. So like I had the flexibility to be able to give my body the rest that it needed. And I was still living in my own place at that point. But we ended up combining households when I think I was 6 months pregnant. I want to say I sold my condo and moved in with my son's father, and still not together. We've never been together, and that's perfect for both of us. And but it was rough. Like the actual like life, the social aspect of being pregnant was tough. The pregnancy itself was fantastic. Like I could have kept my son in for another 18 years. Like I just, I just loved being pregnant. And yeah, and so I actually really enjoyed being pregnant, even though the social aspect was really challenging. Having to tell your family, oh, hey, by the way, I'm pregnant. And then being like, well, who's the father? Like, because I was very quiet about my relationships and who I was dating and all of that stuff. So it came as a surprise to most people, even like my teams at work that I worked with. It was very surprising for them. But ended up having my son, and it was challenging, but it was good. And I always knew, like when I found out that I was pregnant and that I was going to have the baby and everything, I always knew that I was going to take him to my graduation when everything was all done with my doctorate. So that was always like a big goal of mine, was to be able to take him to my graduation. So, and I did, which is nice.
How old was he at the time?
Let's see, graduation was in 2021. So he was about 2.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, I'm looking at my wall right now because I've got a picture of the wall. So yeah, it was cute.
What was life like the first couple of years with him outside of your body?
Well, I ended up having kind of, and I feel like birth stories could be a whole nother podcast, but I had kind of an interesting birth with him where it was like, not necessarily emergency C-section, but definitely like he should come out sooner rather than later. And so, and that was not my birth plan at all. Didn't even enter my brain. It literally didn't even enter my pregnant brain that I would have a C-section. And so that was like very kind of like hard to wrap my head around originally. And then like that was my first big surgery. And so just having the recovery process, I think, afterwards, and then also living with somebody, my son's father, who wasn't as supportive or as emotionally available to support me and my healing body while taking care of an infant. That was really, really hard. That piece of it was extremely challenging. About, let's see, what was it? 3 months after my son was born, COVID hit. So then I was like, really in the thick of living with a newborn and navigating work, the new kind of what work looked like. And then additionally, like managing a kind of a relationship with my son's father as he was dealing with, a kind of an identity shift, basically from transitioning from like not being a father to being a father. I think mothers tend to kind of get that that mentality a little earlier than men do. Just, hey, I'm going to be a mom, and I shift our identity, I think, a little bit earlier because we're growing the child. So the first couple years were, the first year specifically was really, really deep. It was a lot of therapy. I'll say that. I mean, I personally went to a therapist because it was really too much for me to manage on my own. So, and just like understanding like what should I be looking for? What is something that I can do that can help me regulate better, and support this new life better and all of that. And so the first year was really challenging. And I was able to kind of finish up my like actual coursework with my dissertation and my doctoral work. And then kind of the big piece of it started with really writing my dissertation and finishing that up and doing the research piece of it. So doing that over the next like 18 months ish after he was born, that was a big portion of my life. We decided when our son was about a year old to separate households. And so we ended up separating households when our son was about a year. And then, so I bought my own place, and probably about 9 months after that, I switched jobs. So I feel like all of those things like happened within like that initial 2-year time frame. So it was a lot of shifting, a lot of moving, a lot of understanding like what am I doing with my life? Like like really just understanding, like, because you're constantly pivoting, you're constantly shifting your brain, you're constantly shifting to meet the needs of a new employer, meet the needs of a new location that you're living in, meet the needs of a new parental agreement and co-parent, and then finishing up school. And it was a lot. It was a lot. Looking back, I can understand why I was so stressed out, but yeah.
There were a lot of factors, and you were balancing so many hats on top of just being a mom. Like, that's a lot for sure.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
What was your transition like from being a woman with no kids and having a partner to becoming a mom? Like, I know you said it's simpler for women, but what was it like for you personally?
When I found out that I was pregnant, I actually kind of like didn't do anything for like the first almost week, actually. Like I didn't tell anybody. I only told like the insurance company. Even that was like weird to come out of my mouth. And it's almost like this moment where you're like, okay. I mean, and mind you, I was 35. So like I was much older and established in my career. And I'm thinking like, okay, and now my career identity is going to shift because people are going to think like, oh, well, now Haley's a mom. She's not going to be as dedicated to work, or people are going to take me less seriously. And these are like literal thoughts, that go through a woman's head, after they've been, I consider myself to be a very professional person where like my career identity is something that I hold very strongly to. And it's almost like you have to let go of that in some way, shape, or form and just say, you know what? And I actually had a dream about this where I remember I was in the dream, I was like talking to different people. And all of a sudden in the dream, I had this realization that nothing else would come before my son in the future. And I was still pregnant at that point. But I said, nothing else will come before my son. And it was just like this light bulb moment. And I woke up remembering, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is it. And I think like generally that's kind of how I've evolved my career. And, I have mom guilt about my career identity, how that shifted. And after I went back to work, I actually felt super weird because I became one of those moms where I was like, I wish I could be home with my child more. And I never, ever, ever, ever thought I would be that mom. I do enjoy the balance of being able to, work from home and have access to him, and then also still, feel like I'm contributing to something as far as a job goes. But after he was born, I definitely wanted to stay with him a little longer. I think it was 8 weeks off, so about 2 months off after he was born. And that was like, I think the time frame when I fully started to realize, like, this human and how I'm raising him will be more important than any job that I ever have. And that was actually something that I had told his father too, because I think his dad was dealing with a lot of identity shifts with his work really drying up during the pandemic as well. And then also being a new father. And I said, the best things that we can do, or that, you can do, is to be a great father to your son. That's the best work that you can ever do. And that's what really helped me, like, create a new identity and get comfortable with the identity shifts that I had as far as being in a career and now having a child that I had to balance that with. And then also just, accepting, I think, the responsibility of being a mother and kind of wearing a lot of that weight of, I have to be this person for my son, or I need to be, this person for, my family, or, there's just a lot that I think we take on as women, and some of it's societal and some of it is really like very personal, like how we want to show up for our son or our children, and it's almost like how we want them to see us too, as they grow up. So
do you feel like you ever mourned the old version of you, or like I don't want to say old, but like the previous version of you?
I would say it probably didn't come, like, I would say there's pieces of it that I miss. Like, sometimes I miss the autonomy of being able to just go out and do the things that I wanted to do, or, if I wanted a quiet night, I could have that. And right now it looks very different. And I don't necessarily get that quiet night. I don't get dedicated time to just sit down and work on stuff like I used to. And so that piece of it, I definitely miss. Yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hearing you talk about the pregnancy being like a surprise, and you were in the midst of balancing full-time career and getting a degree, and after your baby was born, how were you able to balance your career, your goals, and motherhood?
That's a great question. Sometimes I still ask myself that. I don't, I feel like other moms feel like this too, where you're not giving 100% in anything. Like you have to, it's almost like this reconciliation that you just accept you're not going to give 100% to anything. I wasn't giving 100% to school. I didn't feel like, anyway, I wasn't giving 100% to being a mom. I wasn't giving 100% to work. And, I just had to accept that this was the current state. Like, that was just what I could do. That was literally what I had available memory capacity for. Like, that was what I could do. And so, and I will say that, like, my team and my company was super supportive of me taking, time to work on my dissertation, to be able to take time to spend time with my son, or breastfeed or pump or whatever during the day. I had a lot of very early mornings, 4 a.m., where I would get up and work on my dissertation before my son got up. And those were like the critical, usually about 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half sometimes 3 hours that I could get to myself, to be able to feel like I could accomplish something during the day. And even that, even that hour and a half that I could get, if I could get at least one thing checked off my list, it was like, oh my God, thank goodness. Like, I feel so much better that I got at least one thing done. And that felt really good. I was also getting up and working out. I probably shouldn't have been, but within the first like 2 months, I was getting up and working out, and it was like, why am I killing myself for this? Like, oh my God. And finding out like 3 months in postpartum that I had diastasis recti, and where your abdominal wall like separates. So I had to do recovery for that. So it was just like all these things that I didn't know how to balance, or I didn't know that I even needed to balance. So, yeah, I think the recovery process definitely kind of threw me for a loop in what I needed to reprioritize. And I will say that, like, I think balance looks different for everybody and every mom, and 4 a.m. may not work for some women. And, maybe it's I think you're a night owl. And so maybe it's the like 9 to midnight kind of shift that you're finishing things up. And my brain was just dead by then. I just couldn't do it. But I was also like, I would take a shower after he went to sleep. And that was like my shower time. Some nights, a couple of nights out of the week, I would do that. And, but it was like this delicate balance of like, okay, what is a priority today? What is like the top 3 things that I actually have to do? And maybe a shower was one of them at the end of the day. Maybe it was reading an article for school in the morning. Maybe it was like working on my dissertation. Maybe it was, connecting with a teammate during the day. Whatever it is, but that was like how I kind of structured. I think, like, as I look back on it, I think that's how I ended up structuring most of my days, is like, okay, what is going to make the biggest impact today to make me either feel productive or that I am making some headway. So I don't know if it was always a perfect balance though.
Yeah, no, everything you said makes total sense though. Like, you just do what you can do. And it feels good to have those little wins.
Yeah, it definitely does. Like, yeah, just being able to blow dry my hair in the evening and like have it look normal for at least like 30 minutes before I went to bed, it just felt good. Like,
you're like, ooh, Haley is back.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, it feels so good to have a clean scalp,
For you, like, what was it about finishing school and maintaining a full-time job and being a mom? Like, what was it that like drove you? Like, what helped you continue to want to like have those things and to complete them?
Well, I think I'm smiling because like the first thing that comes to mind is bills. So,
Adulting.
Yeah, adulting, lifing. So definitely bills were a big, like that was like the impetus to stay working and maintain that role. But I think something else, it was interesting around the pregnancy piece and like continuing through schoolwork. I was at one of the last, I think it was in September of 2019, and I had my son in December, and or maybe it was August. I think it might have been August of 2019, and I was at the final residency. So every year, Johns Hopkins brings their doctoral education students back to Baltimore, and they do some like intensive stuff for like 3 days with them. That year, I remember everybody was like, oh my God, you're pregnant. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. How is that happening? Okay. Because everybody's like, you are very brave for being pregnant and in a doctoral program. And I remember I was going through the food line of like the buffet line during one of the break sessions. And this faculty member behind me was like, oh, you're pregnant. Most women don't actually complete the program, so you probably won't complete it. I'm like, believe that he had, number one, the audacity to say that. And to also, I mean, I had him as a professor, and to also challenge my tenacity, my conviction in my studies, like it just felt like an assault on me. And I didn't tell any of the other faculty, but I was like, that was a really dick thing to say. I was like, I can't believe like somebody would say that. And he was probably, 63 or something. And, even if that was a pattern that he saw, he didn't need to say that and put that out there in the universe. And maybe that was like my reason for continuing. But I mean, honestly, like I had already made the conviction, like when I found out I was pregnant, that I was going to finish school. I was going to, take my son with me to my graduation. So that was like already in my brain. But it just felt kind of like a slap in the face for him to say that. I mean, I think generally though, like I've always been very goal oriented and every year, I kind of set new goals for myself and track towards something. And that was like a big thing for me. And I think like the people that I worked with knew that that was something that was very important to me. And that was why they gave me a little bit maybe extra wiggle room in the day to be able to like work on school stuff, where other employers may not have been like that. So I feel fortunate as far as that goes. But I would just say generally, I'm very goal driven and very focused. I always have a planner open. I always have notes going. I always have habit trackers going or things like that help me stay focused and on what I want to be improving myself on. And then I think maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just always wanting to be a better version of myself.
Yeah. It sounds like you have a vision for your life, and when you set it in stone, you make sure to work towards it. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
But like hearing you talk about a professor seeing you physically different, you know what I mean? Like that gave me a lot of flashbacks to pregnancy of just, I feel like women think it's so beautiful. Like we view it as like such a beautiful thing, right? And then we go through this whole transformation, and then our baby comes out, and we continue to have like thick skin. But like I remember even being pregnant and like hearing things like that, right? Like not literally like what you experienced, but like, and I also remember thinking to myself, like, it's so strange that my husband and I are having a baby, but I'm the only one physically presenting presenting it. And like, if people were to judge right now, they would only judge me. And like, that's so unfair,
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that happened to you. Like, that's
No,
really, really sad, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, it was shocking. But my advisors were phenomenal with it. I mean, yeah, my advisors were fantastic.
Once baby was born, and you touched a little bit on this, do you have fear or guilt that appeared in your head or from people around you while you're raising your little guy?
Yeah, I think in a couple different ways. I was meeting some of my partner's family for the first time. And so I think that there was like some guilt with that. And I come from a very small town where it's like not necessarily unheard of for women to have kids without being married, but it almost feels like it's like a little old school where there's some shame in it. And my family never made me feel like I was, shamed about it or anything, but there was still a little bit of like residual guilt probably that I held from that. And then meeting, a lot of his family for the first time and, just trying to show them that I'm a good person, and feeling some guilt related to like, oh, I just, yes, I wanted to keep the baby, and this may have impacted your son's life, who's now the father. And so like, there was definitely some guilt with that. And I think, to this day, I still have mom guilt. I mean, if I have to leave work early to pick up my son for school, or if I am, telling people, oh, I can't meet until, 8:30 or 9 a.m. because I've got to drop my son off, mom guilt immediately. If I want to go out for the night, mom guilt. I mean, it's just so pervasive that we try to be this like perfect parent, and our children, like, realistically, like my son, he wouldn't ever think anything bad of me if I was going out for the evening or something like that. He may run up to me and say, Mommy, why are you leaving? And that makes you feel even worse. Then you're like, oh my God. But yeah, and then there have been times when I like do cancel plans because I'm like, I just don't think mentally I can go out knowing that my son is at home. Like I've overcome a lot of that, but when he was little, like I did not go out. I mean, I think the first time I went out was when he was about 11 months old. Like,
but it was also like prime COVID though, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, which is kind of surprising. Yeah. So he was 11 months. So it was November of 2020. Yep. So yeah, I'm actually surprised I went out.
We all needed to go out. It was just a matter of how do we go out.
But that was really the first time in the evening that I had gone out and like had a glass of wine. And I remember I felt like crap coming back. I do remember that. But yeah, so I mean, I think that mom guilt definitely showed up. Guilt as a person showed up. Guilt for not being able to be fully 100% at work showed up. Yeah, there was a lot of guilt all the way around. Yeah.
Wow, Haley. Especially with all the hats you're wearing. Like you were just wearing so many hats. Was there anything you were extremely unprepared for in becoming a parent?
I had never changed his diaper. I mean, I know that's pretty shocking, but ever. Yeah, I had never changed a baby's diaper in my entire life.
Oh, did you take classes?
We took some like pregnancy classes or whatever, and I think we might have had to put a diaper on like a baby doll or something maybe, but that was like the extent of my diapering.
But it like makes sense, right? Once your baby was born, it was like, did it all just click?
Yeah. I mean, you just realize like, okay, well, I'm just going to figure it out. I mean, and we did a ton of research. I will say, like, for having a partner who I didn't expect to have a kid with, we were on the same page with a lot of parenting things, which was a relief because it could have been even more challenging if we weren't on the same page. Like we were both very much in the sense of like, okay, developmentally, what do we need to be thinking about? What's best for baby right now? What are some educational things that we need to be thinking about? What's, health-wise do we need to be thinking about? So, I mean, there was like all of those things. And I think another thing that I didn't realize was, so I was always told like, oh, you'll lose the baby weight when you're breastfeeding. You don't worry about it. You'll lose all your baby weight, blah, blah, blah. I gained like 75 pounds, which is wild. But I didn't lose the weight immediately. And that was like really shocking to me because I've always been like a very petite person. And that was really hard. I mean, I remember even my mom was out visiting, and my grandmother was on the phone with her, and she asked, did Haley lose the baby weight yet? And I'm like, dude, it's 3 weeks. I'm still healing from a C-section. but like it just felt so deflating because then you feel like nobody truly understands, like, A, how much stress I'm under, B, my recovery, C, I'm breastfeeding and the weight isn't coming off. like it just felt like it was just that to me was very mind-blowing, that my own family, or like my society, like my network, was like still focused probably on like old Haley. Like here's what we think that Haley should be like. And I had changed so much at that point that, I didn't let it get to me. I was like, you know what? She's from a very different generation. That is like what their generation really thought about, and appearances and all of that. And I just realized, you know what? That's not something that's important to me right now. And I had to reconcile that. I had to say, you know what? This isn't something that's important. But that was a big thing for me to deal with. And then also, when the weight did not come off, like it didn't come off until I stopped breastfeeding. And so that's something that like nobody tells you about. Nobody talks about that. And just how much your body changes. And even if you lose the weight, your body still looks different. So like, I mean, I think I'm still getting used to that as well. Like as now perimenopause comes up, like I'm still dealing with changes and shifts in that space too. So, yeah, but I would say like those are probably the biggest, like mind-blowing things I think that I dealt with, which is so funny because it's more about like societal expectations than dealing with a tiny human, which is wild.
Outside noise, right?
Like, all the stuff that happens outside that enters into your life, and you have to figure out how to manage the onslaught of other people's perceptions about you. You really have to like figure out a way to manage that. At least I did.
Yeah. You know, their intentions aren't bad, but those comments that are made towards you throughout your life as a woman, like, I mean, I remember like planning for a wedding, consistent like noise, right? From the outside. And then pregnancy, consistent noise. Like I remember somebody saying like, "Oh, you gained weight in your cheeks and in your arms." And it's like, "Well, yeah. Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Do I need to look the same and just have like a little bump?" Like,
yeah, right.
Because I was hungry like every 15, 20 minutes when in my first trimester. Like my body was just working that hard to grow it. And so yeah, I also gained like 70 pounds when I was carrying. But yeah, there's just like nonstop judgment noise, even if it's not like their intentions are bad, like it's just the way it lands. And like what you were saying, 3 weeks postpartum, like 3 weeks, like you're barely understanding your body, you know, like you have just delivered this child, slowly coming back into your own, and then hearing these comments. Ugh.
Yeah.
So what would you say happy Haley means to you today, like the happy version of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still happy Haley, I think is pretty consistent from before baby to now as far as my desire to continue growing my career. I think that's something that I still really feel is important to me in my life. I think it's shifted a little bit as I've gotten older. I don't know if it's necessarily, maybe it is a little bit because of becoming a parent, but I think generally, like as I've reflected on, where I want to go in the next, let's say 40 years, almost reframing my contributions to society or, organizations, and how I can balance my happiness and org deliverables and parenthood. I think happiness to me right now is being able to wake up and get breakfast and school for my son, get some meditation in the morning, get some exercise in, whether that's walking the dog or going to the gym, working on things that I think will either help organizations or help people. So like career coaching and stuff like that. Yeah, just generally having a different perspective on how I can contribute more to society or to people and what my purpose is in life. And sometimes, I think after having a child, you realize like your purpose in life shifts a little bit. Maybe before my purpose was to, be the VP of blah, 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 whatever. And then now it's like my purpose is to help my son navigate life and feel like he feel valued, for him to feel valued and for him to feel like he can make a valuable contribution, and showing him that looks different for everybody. I think my level of happiness definitely has evolved. I think like that's the best way that I can put it. My happiness has evolved over the last, 5.5, almost 6 years. And happiness, even today, looks probably different than it does tomorrow. I may be able to do something completely different tomorrow. So I think generally though, like overall, my happiness is around like my purpose, my, how I can contribute and really aligning to my values. I think that has been a big thing coming up over the last 6 to 12 months is like, how can I evolve my happiness to include my values? And that's at home, that's at work, that's in parenting, dealing with, significant stressors or things like that. And really just taking a different stance on my health and happiness overall.
Yeah, you're so intentional.
Try to be.
How would you say motherhood has changed you?
I will say I've probably put in more therapy hours on the last 5 years than I ever thought I would. Not to say that like that's because of being a parent, but it's because being a parent highlights how you want to be different. Like it highlights like, okay, this is maybe how I was raised and I don't want to be like that. And how, and in managing that conflicting perspective in your brain, like this is what the new Haley wants to be like, but this is what, how I've been conditioned. This is conditioned Haley. And so how do you meet those two things in the middle and gradually shift to like what that new Haley wants? And so that therapy, a lot of that therapy, thinks about and works through shifting a lot of those shifts. And I will say that like it has been over the last probably 1.5 years has been the most significant shifts that I have personally had, I think, in my entire life. And I think it stems from me just really looking at how am I showing up for myself, my son, my partner, my family, and is that how I want to be? Is that part of the life that I want to create? Is that not? And it probably goes back to that intentionality, like really thinking about, was it worth that argument that, maybe I had the other day to not stick to my values? Because maybe that part of me was that conditioned Haley and it wasn't the new Haley. And so really working through a lot of that to become a better person overall and become more aligned with just how I want to show up in life. And, thinking about that next 40, like I don't necessarily want to live through a lot of those conditioned responses again. I don't want to have that as my default way I behave or I respond. And so, whether that's with my son or, even myself, how I self-talk. So I will say that, like, I think that is probably one of the ways that, like, being a mother has changed me, is that, like, I think there's just a lot more reflection. And I was reflective before, but I feel like it puts it in your face when you're a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see, like, how your son is relating to things, or your child relates to things, maybe based on how you relate to things. And is that healthy? Is that not healthy? Is that a behavior you want to condone, or maybe that needs to shift? And so just really being more mindful about how each interaction makes an impact.
My friend Jinsol, she's the one in the episode before you. She used the word mirror. Like, she's like,
Yeah.
having a child is like a mirror of like who they're around.
Yeah.
So hearing you talk about that is like, how almost like, how are you responding to the reflection, right? And like, what do you want to change about it? So it makes total sense.
Yeah, that's so true.
Who would you say is your village today? And you don't have to name names, but who is your village?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good, I would say, like, definitely like my mom friends like you. I think like those people are definitely fantastic to share things that are happening, like, hey, have you dealt with this? Or, hey, I'm dealing with this, and have you run into this? Or what advice would you give me? Or, hey, my son is doing this. What's your son doing? I think that's always super helpful, just to, obviously, like, I didn't interact with kids a lot before I had my son, so I have no comparison really. And so it's nice to be able to have other moms to bounce things off of. Or like yesterday, I was having lunch with a former coworker who's also a mom, and we were, talking about life changes and just your body changes. And, just being able to have a group of women to talk candidly about that stuff with is so important, because I don't have that with my family. I don't have that option really with my family. Maybe my mom, because I think she's a little more open about it. But another one is actually a group of friends that I have who, I would say they're probably about, 8 to 10 years younger than me. And so it's kind of nice to have a group of girlfriends to go out with, who don't necessarily have the I don't want to say baggage, but the weight of a child, behind them. And it's just nice to be able to go out and just laugh and talk about silly things and have a martini and enjoy life in those, few hours, and kind of feel like maybe before baby Haley, and, how I used to go out. So that, and to me, like, that's an unwinding that I really need to be able to, like, just decompress, I think, from a lot of the mother things and stressors that we have in life. And so that's a really healthy thing that I probably have had over the last year and a half. So it's only been more recent. And then I think too, the need to be with other kind of entrepreneurial women, because I do think that, like, I have more of an entrepreneurial spirit as I'm getting older. And it's really helpful to have other women to bounce business ideas off of, or like, hey, have you dealt with this before in business? Or, hey, I'm having this client meeting. How would you approach this? It's just really nice. And I think, like, if you only have a group of like corporate friends who you can talk to, it's a very different lens. And so it's really nice to be able to have, I feel like, a really solid foundation now. And I actually said this to the group of women before, that I think this is the first time in my life that I've had like a solid group of women, like, friends. Which is crazy. I'm 41.
It's kind of hard, like, and depending on what you're going through in life, you can only really want to spend time with certain types of people too. So your life changes, people in your life changes, right? So it makes sense that like now that you've had your baby for 5-6 years, you're able to kind of finally find.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot about growing up too, and like understanding what, and probably it goes back to like values, what do I value, and how can these folks, either do they align with it, do they not align with it, and then deciding, who you want to spend time with.
What about advice on parenthood? Have you found anything that has been helpful for you?
I think like bouncing ideas off of friends, doing a lot of research. Asking like professionals' opinions about things. I know these are like very basic things, but
I like what you said earlier too, of just it looks different for everybody.
Yeah, it does. I mean, yeah. I'm very and I think our situation is very different. Like my son's father and I's situation is very different, and so it's been hard because we really don't have a model for that. And other than like actually taking care of our kid, like it's really hard to ask other people for advice about our situation because there's nobody else that's really doing this.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, you have to make the best decision with the information that you have at the time. And, and don't kill yourself if it maybe, oh God, maybe we weren't supposed to use the Sparkle Unicorn Fluoride toothpaste, like, God, okay.
Oops.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about motherhood that you feel like you want to share personally from your experience, or you feel like it's just not talked enough about?
This is something that always eats away at me, is how little the healthcare system actually knows about women and their pregnancy and their bodies. And I mean, and the bad thing is like I asked, so I had a midwife pretty much the entire pregnancy until I went to the hospital to have a C-section. And looking back on it, I don't necessarily regret having a midwife the entire time, but I also do wonder, like, what would have been the difference if I would have gone to like an actual physician or a provider? Like, would I have gotten more information, or would it have been the same? What would have been the difference? That generally, I would ask questions and they couldn't always give me an answer. So it was pretty interesting from that perspective. And then also, like I had said, it was never in my birth plan, didn't even enter my brain about having a C-section. Nobody in the midwifery that I went to ever even said that was a likely outcome. I mean, I'm 5'2", and my baby was 8 pounds, 3 ounces. That's a big baby for a little person.
Yeah.
And I wish that they would have like at least had a conversation with me that, hey, you might have to have a C-section and let's talk about that. And it wasn't until like I was literally after almost 72 hours of labor that they popped it on me. And they're like, well, it looks like we might have to do a C-section. And I'm like, oh my God. So I was freaking out in the labor and delivery room, like freaking out. And I just wish that would have been a conversation ahead of time so I could mentally process it a little bit more. So I think there's that. And I just think like generally, like the postpartum period, we don't give ourselves enough credit or time to like just be in our bodies. And just acknowledge that breastfeeding as a new mom, weird. Okay. Like, it's just weird initially. You don't know if your baby's going to latch on. Thank God my son did, I mean, but that was not talked about. That, how you're like, I wasn't even told that my milk wouldn't come in for, what is it, 24 hours. Or maybe I was, and I'm in the, recovery room, and I'm probably not remembering things like that. I have no idea. But then there's that pressure of like, okay, I've got to produce milk. Well, where's my milk at? And then, son's father is like, why aren't you producing milk? I'm like, I don't know. All these things that,
It's everything. Yeah.
I didn't have any context to, and nobody in my family breastfed. So like, I'm the only one winging it. So I'm like Googling all these things, like I'm trying to just educate myself as I'm working through these. And then I'm like, new parenting. And so like, I think like generally there's just so many unknowns and things that people just don't talk about that, and it's across womanhood, like overall, I mean, like I was mentioning perimenopause, and there's hardly any research on that. So like, it's like we constantly go through different phases of our lives as women. And I think pregnancy is a big one that's like this black box in the medical community where nobody knows what's actually happening. And they don't have actual diagnostics to like tell us what is going to happen. And then we have the baby and they just say, okay, baby, okay. Okay, fantastic. Great. Okay.
They're moving so fast themselves, like the medical staff. Yeah. We're just a number pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is something I often talk about with like other women who are either thinking about becoming pregnant or are pregnant, or, maybe they're in the perimenopause space. Cause I know a lot of like, late stage moms like me where, you're kind of on that cusp. We're what do they call them? Geriatric, pregnancies, after 35. So, I think like we just don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about the nitty gritty, like the really like, God, yeah, that really sucks that, you had that as a birth story, or, that sucks that you had, a rash on your body and you couldn't take anything for it because you couldn't mess with your baby's breastfeeding, like there's just like things like that. And it's not until you find like a good tribe of women that are open about talking about that kind of stuff that you feel like, okay, this could be normal. Like this could be normalized.
You said a word that like hit me, process.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like pregnancy, I mean, like, even if you're trying for a baby, right? Like, there's just so much happening throughout trying to being pregnant, to delivering, to raising, where it's just like, if you don't have that time to process all of the things that you're experiencing, you're probably feeling it. And then if you don't have somebody, a group of girlfriends or friends, or just a trusted space of people to like bounce off these with, it is very challenging. Like it's so hard to feel all of these feelings and to go through all of these experiences and not be able to like actually verbalize it and be like, is that weird? Like what you said, like breastfeeding, weird. Like, yeah, like it is very natural, but also it's extremely foreign. Right. And we're just expected to be professionals. Like somehow, because we can grow a baby, we're also assigned to become this professional at it's of course like amazing, and you're growing into this, not only are you growing a child and raising a child, but you're also growing and raising yourself. Like it's like a new version of you, and you have to figure it out, like somehow learn and figure out the new version of you. Before I go into the outro, do you want to share how people can reach out to you and a little bit more about your business?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so you can always look me up on LinkedIn. I also have a booking link on my LinkedIn page, so if folks even just want to do a 30-minute consult or chat or anything like that, open to that. My website is cowrietalentsolutions.com. And then I have a couple brands under Cowrie Talent Solutions, CLD Advisory, which is kind of the business arm, if you will, of like the consulting space, anything from talent development and learning and development kind of support. And then the Cowrie Career Compass focuses on career coaching, career transitions for early to mid-career professionals typically, and helping them get where they want to go in their career.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Haley, for sharing your world with us today. Please reach out to her if you would like to learn more about her work or about her personally. And for viewers, leave a blue heart if you resonated with my conversation with Haley today. On our next episode, we'll be chatting with a girlfriend that started a business after having 2 kids. I'll see you on the next episode of After the Baby Sleeps. Bye, everybody.